Hey, what's up you guys, it's IAmTheLionRider, and if you're like me, you love the animals in Planet Zoo, but are wondering, where are all the animals that aren't in Planet Zoo but show up as props in the game? Today, I thought I would do a deep dive into analyzing why those are props in the game and not official animals. So, without further ado, let's get started. So, the first bit of animal props that I wanted to discuss are these props here. So these are props that I believe were never intended to be animals in the game and are simply just made for decoration purposes. Stuff like the whale, the dodo bird, some ducks, cobra, etc. These are animals that were simply made to flesh out the theme sets that they represent respectively, and I don't believe were ever intended to be animals in the game. So I just wanted to comment on that because I know some people are probably going to bring up, but what about the dodo bird? I really don't think that was meant to be in the game. It was just kind of a tongue-in-cheek little reference that Frontier liked to add in. But without further ado, let's kind of go into these props because I've separated them kind of by category. So the most notable animals that people often cite when they talk about, animals that were neglected or forgotten about but show up as props are these set here. So this is the sign set for Planet Zoo. And as you can see, it shows off animals like the dromedary camel, the black rhino, the red deer, the American alligator, etc. These animals are animals that show up as props in the game, but obviously their counterparts in the actual game, like the caribou, the Indian rhino, the Bactrian camel, are not represented through these props accurately. So, why is that? And I think this comes down to how game development teams are organized. There are animators, texture artists, riggers, concept artists, character/creature artists, and environment artists, or prop artists, if you will. And so if we look at the Making of Planet Zoo video, look carefully at what they say about the research and development for the game.
In Planet Zoo, we're really trying to get the most authentic looking animals as we possibly can.
We've researched very, very heavily. We've engaged with experts both in zoos and within biology departments. Our animation team have studied hours and hours of video footage. The character modeling team have done an exceptional job, really, really looking at all of the details of the animals.
So did you catch that? They mentioned a lot about how much research they went into to make the animals look as authentic as possible. The animators, creature artists, texture artists, they spent a ton of time researching and developing the most lifelike animals ever. So they spent months upon months of research to develop these animals. However, they did omit the environment artists, and I think that is sort of where this situation happens. So, for those who aren't familiar with the game development process, 3D artists aren't all doing the same job. So if you're a 3D artist at a large company like Frontier, you are usually specialized in one role, either as a prop artist or a creature/character artist. So as an example, when I worked professionally, I was an environment artist. So I focused on making props like this, so decorations, foliage, rocks, etc. And there's an awful lot of environment artists relative to the amount of character artists there are. So that would also explain why, if you look at the DLCs, we get a lot of props, but we don't get a lot of animals. And it really comes down to that, because characters and creatures, the industry, everyone wants to make them. Everyone wants to make creatures and characters. But you need a lot more environment or assets to flesh out a game. So, if we look at the animals here, what would an employee who is an environment artist at Frontier do if he had crunch, which is basically when a game is about to release and you need to rush the game out and work extra hard to get all of your assets done. So, you're an environment artist at Frontier, and you get a list of signs you have to make for the game. And this is where I would like to present Google theory. This is a theory that says that list of animals that environment artist got included things like, make me a camel sign, make me a rhino sign, make me a deer sign. And what that environment artist did was he typed into Google the word camel. And you can do this for yourself if you would like to experiment. What is the second result? This picture. And believe it or not, it looks an awful lot like the actual dromedary camel sign we got. So, maybe, they just didn't know that it was a Bactrian camel that was officially in the game, and so they just went with the first Google result. So, let's do it again for the Black Rhino. If you got the word rhino in your list, you would type in the word rhino on Google, and wouldn't you know, the first result is a black rhino, not an Indian rhino. And wouldn't you know, the pose is eerily similar to the one that we got in the game. If you do it for deer, and this was something that I want to shout out the Planet Zoo Discord team for helping me analyze. They helped prove that there is a stock image on Google of a red deer that they literally traced the image exactly. And so if you overlay the image on top of the actual stock image, it is a perfect recreation. So this basically almost proves my theory that they were simply just using the most likely images and then tracing over them to get the props that we ultimately got. Not really worried about what the specific animals are. So, same thing, you get the word alligator, here's the image that comes up. Trace that image, now it's a sign in the game. That's just what you would do as an environment artist if you, really aren't paying attention to the in-depth research or analysis of the game and trying to get these props out. Because you have an awful lot. There's a lot of props in the game. If you're looking at the DLCs and stuff, we're talking about like 200 plus per pack. So the base game had easily over 1,000. And so even if there was a lot more environment artists, that's still an awful lot of work. So you want to get these done very, very quickly. Maybe kind of overlooking quality and, reaffirming your things. And so you're going to see these oversights. And to kind of back up this evidence, I want to take a look at some other oversights. So if we look at the African and Indian elephant signs in the game, you would be like, oh, okay, well, these look good. These are actually in the game. However, if you look at this sign, it says elephant sign. Okay, that's not crazy. And so you would think this sign might specify Indian elephant. But no, it actually says African elephant. So this is an example of another oversight in the game that is officially in the game. And we're now a year out and it still hasn't been, corrected. So these could just be things that during the development process were mistakes. And it's okay to admit that mistakes happen occasionally or are oversights. And so these are just, the situation that we have is, I think the most likely scenario, Occam's razor states that these props were just simply a error on part of Frontier's environment team. They simply just made the wrong animal. And I think that is the situation. It doesn't mean that Frontier is secretly hiding the dromedary camel away and is going to repackage it in a desert DLC in the future. It simply could have just been a mistake, and I think that is the most likely scenario. Similarly, if we come over to the red deer statue and sign, these are situations where I believe these could have been interpreted as just part of the classic theme, and sort of would have internally been considered part of this category, where they are animals that weren't really intended to ever be in the game. They were just kind of made because they look cool. Because they don't even specify this is a red deer or anything. They just call it a stag prop. And stags are very common in European culture, specifically in the UK where Frontier is, located. So I think this is a situation where Occam's razor says that these were just simply made as props and not actually intended as animals in the game. So, let's look at some more evidence to why this could be the case. And that comes from concept artists. So, look at this. This is clearly a black rhino, correct? So, if you look at the actual set that this sign is from, it includes animals like the African elephant, the giraffe, the tiger, the lion, etc. But if you look up on the internet, on ArtStation for Planet Zoo, you will find the actual concept artist that made it, here. And this concept artist clearly made all of these signs kind of using what I consider to be the ABC animals. So your most basic animals like elephants, giraffes, lions, tigers, rhinos, hippos, etc. The most common zoo animals were what they decided to make as concept art for the game. And wouldn't you know, the easiest thing if you're an environment artist, if you don't want to focus on texturing to get some extra props, is literally, hey, let's just use the actual concept art as the texture for these props. Cut them out, put them in the game, cool, now they have some extra signs to play with. And so since the rhino and the jaguar sign, which I have over here, were already made, you might as well put them in the base game. And so I guess we can discuss this section over here. So these are animals that, even though they were props in the base game, later came out as official in the official animals in the DLC. So specifically the South American DLC, we have the capuchin monkey and the jaguar. And so this does give some credence to the people who believed that maybe props do indeed hint at future DLC animals. Because as you can see here, these were both props in the base game. A few months later, we got the South American DLC, and boom, here you go. Here's the capuchin monkey and the jaguar. However, I think, once again, it could have been a situation where make me a monkey sign, make me a jaguar sign, and there you go. And, you know, they just happen to coincidentally be made into official animals later on. And I think that's sort of what we can sort of expect with some of these animals like the Black Rhino. I really don't doubt with this many props and the sheer popularity of the white and black rhino that they won't be eventually included in the final game. Maybe it'll be in an African DLC, maybe it'll be, you know, as a free update, who knows, but I really, really don't doubt that we won't see the African rhino before the game is done. And so let's look at some more African rhino props. So we have this sign here, which once again, if you go on ArtStation, is another prop that a concept artist made, that they simply just took the texture, made a prop out of it, and here you go. Now you have the Planet Zoo African Wall decorative shutter, and it has a rhino on it. And if we look at the other two, these are also pieces of concept art that were developed, what I believe, very, very, very early into the game's development. Way back when the game was Planet Safari. And this game was obviously focused on Africa. And the African set was, I think we all know, the first set that Planet Zoo developed, basically. And so it's likely that these concept artists just made some generic African props based off of common African animals like elephants and giraffes and lions and rhinos. And then these props were just developed into 3D before the final animal roster was decided upon. And so even in the end, we got the Indian rhino alone. It doesn't mean that these props couldn't have been made even before the Indian rhino was created. So I hope that kind of like, you know, sheds some light on the game development process and shows that while, you know, we could still see these animals in the game, it's not always a big conspiracy theory about what was actually going to be, you know, included or not included in the game. So thank you guys for watching, and I hope that this, you know, was informative and kind of, you know, can calm some people's, you know, giant, you know, crazy conspiracy theories about them holding back DLC and stuff. And yeah, so thank you for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.